Welcome to the show, guys. And today you can see the smile on my face, which is self-explanatory. That how pleased I am to be conversing with a guest who is on the podcast today with us. He's none other than the man himself, Mr. Rattan Keswani, sir, whose story, whose life in hospitality and giving back to the industry is so impressive, so impactful, and his story is so distinctive that you would vouch for this conversation again and again because it is so full of adventures, full of taking risks, giving back to the people, and discovering some new horizons and all. So please join me in welcoming Rattan Keswani, sir, at the hospitable couch with his fruitful insights as we have him on the show. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for
Pleasure.
being at the hospitable couch and blessing us with your presence and gracing our show. And to someone who has looked up to you while I was getting into that module of hoteliering and seeing those legends in hospitality in total, and getting to meet you in person and having your time with fruitful insights with their experience. It is an honor for me to share some time with you, sitting across to you. And this is like a dream come true because I've never professionally we met in the industry and all and all. So this is something very memorable and cherishable. So how are you feeling today with the conversation we are going to have in the next few minutes?
Looking forward to it. I think your podcast and the people that you've interviewed since we last met informally, I think has been very impressive. You've got a great range of people that you met who expressed their life stories to you. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And
sir.
again, belated happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
You guys completed your first anniversary, which is a wonderful thing to have completed
so much,
without any interruption or disruption as a new feature. Well done.
All your blessings, sir. All your blessings. So, as we discover our guests who have been so immensely influential on budding and aspirants of this industry, what I like to do is discover you when you were not a hotelier, your childhood days, your real-time inclination of those days, schooling, college, because we have different kind of interest, inclination towards going into different activities. How did it came in your way? Your synopsis of those days.
Well, synopsis is difficult to give if you're taking so many years into account. But no, I mean, there was never any thought for, let's say, the first 18 odd years that I would ever land up in hospitality. And I'm not a hotel management graduate. I have no formal early learnings from an undergraduate point of view. I studied briefly in Delhi till class 7. Then I moved because my father used to keep moving. I moved to Chandigarh, which is where I completed my school education, and I did my BCom honors graduation from what I believe is one of the nation's finest institutions called DAV College.
Okay.
And I did well within the university circles, and I used to play tennis. It was a small little group that we had. Life was much simpler, as one would say. Original thought was to join the armed forces. I happened to meet a very famous air marshal named was P.C. Lal. At that time, he was the head of the Indian Air Force. An uncle of mine was a senior officer who was getting a medal, so I had gone for the medal ceremony. And I happened to engage with him at a very young age, and he asked me, he said, "Young man, what would you like to do?" And I said, "My dream is to be a pilot." And while at that time his candidness was bothersome, it made sense because he said, "Well, that's not going to happen. What is the power of your lenses?" I've been wearing spectacles since I was 6. And I told him, he says, "If you don't mind joining the ground crew, if any form, we may find you a place. But flying with your lenses, young man, I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Okay.
It's not going to happen. So that was a bit of a downer that day. Then as college was coming to a completion, there was a desire to get into an MBA course in the premier institutions. Why that didn't happen, I have written about in my book, so I think you should ask your listeners to maybe buy my book. It's available on Amazon. So yeah, while I prepared for the MBA, it didn't go through.
Okay.
Also, I used to play reasonably good tennis, so I played sub-junior nationals.
I was coming to that point because sports was the missing element in your
Yeah,
life.
so I did play sub-junior nationals a couple of years. 1 year I played the junior nationals too. And I had the pleasure of being beaten black and blue by the famous Ramesh Krishnan, who later on became Indian #1, was ranked in the world. His father was Ramanathan Krishnan. I played him in front of the legends like Premjit Lal and all these guys. Because I used to play in Chandigarh, I was one of the better ones in Chandigarh, so I had got into the tournament. But that was not going to continue. It was an expensive sport, unless the wonderful thing about DAV, at least, and I hope they're continuing now, is that if you played the sport for the college, then everything was taken care of. So I was the captain of the college team, which means your rackets, your kit, right down to your, the guards, were all sponsored by them. You had a cafeteria allowance, which would be a princely amount today, and even then was. And the only other person who had a higher amount than me for a daily cafeteria allowance was Kapil Dev. He was one batch my junior in another course. He was the captain of the cricket team. I was the captain of the tennis team, so we used to kind of engage together. But in the 40 rupees that I was entitled to every day, I used to be able to entertain close to about 70 odd people for samosas and chai or whatever they wanted. So therefore people, it's like nowadays people go to the bar and say drinks on me. So they used to wait for me to come to say, pakora, chai and samosa on me. So yeah, but that was a pleasure. It was really what the college invested in us. But so when I then couldn't complete the MBA part, and
you were enrolled for MBA or you didn't?
Well, like I said, it's an interesting story. Let me not blow it in the podcast. You should read the book, and that'll give you the answer. But I guess, as one would say, destiny would have it. I had no idea about hospitality.
Okay.
I had entered a 5-star hotel twice. Once when my father was entertaining a colleague, and he had taken us to the Indian restaurant in what was then the Oberoi Mount View, now is just the Mount View Hotel in Chandigarh. And once in Delhi when I was dating a young lady, and I had taken her to what was then the Oberoi Intercontinental's cafe called Cafe Espresso. But I had enough money to, order one cold coffee with ice cream with two straws. Most romantic thing that you could do, but I didn't have any more money to do that. So that was my foray, or how should I say, exposure to any hotel, till the time I joined the course.
Okay.
And again, the startup in the course was confusing, not very, as an interesting start, but it settled down. I did well in the course, the management training. So a lot of things was exposed to a lot of things that a normal person from a middle class family from a tier 2 city had no idea of. And then my journey began in Mumbai as an assistant front office manager. I left the Oberoi Hotels briefly for exactly a year between 85, 86. Came back and was with them for about 30 plus years in various positions. I worked with them in Delhi, Mumbai, opened Simla, Bangalore, then in Saudi Arabia, and then in Sri Lanka. So it was a wonderful learning and growth journey in Oberoi Hotels. And I left them in 2012, early financial year 2012. when I was president of Old Trident Hotels, and also had a few Oberoi hotels reporting into me because they were in the periphery, functional periphery of a Trident. And after that, after 2012, I joined Lemon Tree Hotels as their deputy managing director, and I had a personal joint venture with the company, which was called Carnation Hotels, which was the management arm of Lemon Tree. Lemon Tree those days had 3 brands. Today they have 7. So, and I was responsible for signing management contracts in that small company that I had set up with support from the Lemon Tree system. And I think I did that reasonably successfully for 10 years. So when I left them about 2.5 years ago now, we'd signed about 65 contracts, 47 hotels were open. In the meantime, Lemon Tree, just before the pandemic, had acquired a hotel company called Keys, which had similar 3 brands, which had to be amalgamated. And then the luxury brand was birthed, Aureka Hotels and Resorts, so I was involved with that whole process. So yeah, it was a very enjoyable 10 years. A different 10 years, because one was luxury, fine company with a history behind it. One was a young company, they just completed 20 years now, a few months ago. Young company, different business model, using the intricacies of mid-scale budget, but tweaking that to be a very fine, if I use the words fine very carefully and very diligently, model of mid-scale and budget hotels.
Okay.
With a perfect financial business model, both in terms of design and functioning, and the pristineness and the detail that numbers would be looked at without having today's AI and functional IT systems when they began. It was a total switch in segmentation, but as much as I learned a lot of things in Oberoi Hotels, there's a whole vast set of chapters of learning that I got in Lemon Tree Hotels.
Oh.
So it widened my thinking process differently. I can now balance many things instead of being a expert of any kind in either upscale luxury or just economy and budget and mid-scale. And the balance is what I used to try and do in the hotels that I managed. So there were elements that were there from both parts, so it was very satisfying. I also was part of doing some interesting stuff for their branding, etc. Just to look after some of those verticals. The other part that was fantastic, which people are following but not as well, was how wonderfully, passionately, almost fanatically, Parthu, when he began, Rattan Keswani, at the company, focused on giving opportunities to the differently able people. Yeah. Many have thought about how to have differently able people in their teams, but have always shied away from it. For societal fears, cultural fears, fears that the guests would not accept it, or have tried to do it more charitably. But here there was no charity. The differently able people would do a functioning role as much as anybody else would. So they were part of the budgeted function. It wasn't that they were extra. It was done for the right reasons. It was done to provide opportunity, provide an enhanced self-esteem amongst the differently able people. There were a couple of disablements, if I may call it that way, though I think we are disabled, they are more able than we are. The categories came into play. And the company began by saying we'd have 10 to 12% of the employment in the total mix to be differently abled. It grew to 16%. That means 16% of the working population in Lemon Tree Hotels were differently able people of different kinds. Then there was a category that was established, which was what would be called economically, disadvantaged. Because most people in our business, want to hire graduates who are from catering colleges, Then because people were not available, the maximum that anybody did was class 10, class 11, class 12. But part of when Lemon Tree started the system, which said, even if a aspirant had done just class 4 or 5, but they had the passion, they had the good attitude. It didn't matter if they didn't speak fluent English, they could be taught. But they were good communicators in Hindi or whatever. But their families were people who were below the poverty line. Okay. So as long as the family had a below poverty line certificate. So you gave employment to those young people whose families were below the poverty line. And because of that, they hadn't been able to, either by desire or design, not be able to take higher education. So 4% of those people, 4% of the seats or opportunities were kept aside for that category. So in essence, 20% of the employees in Lemon Tree Hotels are supposed to be either differently able in one kind or economically handle the other kind, which is an amazing thing for anybody to do. And to be able to do that, train them, for guests to embrace that thought, and to do it fanatically, because it causes resistance from people like us who are supposedly totally able, because we feel uncomfortable working in the proximity or want to do that stuff. Guests initially find it a little challenge, but it was something that was not going to be softened, changed, and it got there. And I think that was something that is almost, how should I say it? It's a mind-changing, culture-changing experience for me, which is very rewarding, just personally rewarding, which is why, and no reason to kind of sit on their shoulders, but I decided when I wrote the book that while people contribute, that all the royalties that would come to my share for the book would go to one of the NGOs that used to train differently able people, would then help us train them in hotel functions, which is the agency called Muskan. They're in Vasant Kunj. Because I think it's a community that doesn't get looked after, and we kind of shy away from it. So, the economic model was different. There's a brilliant learning, very little waste, different design, to therefore be able to reward both the market with excellence and the right price and experience, and reward the shareholders and the partners in the whole exercise. Great stuff. I'm very happy they've gone. I think they're now at about 108 or 109 functioning hotels and 20, 25 to open still. So yeah, great success. I wish them the best. But there were two spectrums of 30 years in one and 10 years in the other.
10 years in one.
So yeah, great life. I enjoyed it.
And I enjoyed it, the 360 turn of the 4 decades that you gave me just right now. Because I'm in totally off that from Oberoi's going to fluctuating your careers to
yeah, it's different. It's, the whole thing is different, and it, I think, clears up the mind clutter that all of us have.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a brilliant business. It's a lovely industry to be part of. I enjoyed every moment of it. So.
I want to now understand from the talks and that it is evident, like having inculcated and employed those people who were from these backgrounds, I think the company is first of its kind to do this, and in an industry where everything has to be impeccable and no scope of any shortcomings in front of guests, when you cannot afford anything to be of that kind where the guest finds a foul in complaining or something. Having inculcated those people that Rattan Keswani sir did, you did a shifting from upscale luxury to coming down to this brand which was mid-scale. What thing is pivotal in your, in your life that encourages you to take risk?
Okay, so coming back to your question, I don't think there are any similarities in the journey. One, for the correct disclosure, we are not related, even though we have the same surnames. We tried to find the family tree, but we couldn't. He comes from a very successful engineering background. He was a topper at IIT Delhi. He was a topper at IIM Calcutta. His beginnings were different with TAS, and then worked as an EA to the very famous chairman MD of Tata Steel many years ago. His journey was very different. And because of TAS assigned him to IHC, and therefore his hotel journey began. But by background, he's an engineer. By background, he's an MBA. My background had no similarity to that. At a point in time when I was with the Oberoi and he was with the Taj, we were competitors, but we had never met.
Oh.
I happened to meet him when I came back from, became general manager of the Oberoi New Delhi. We had some common friends who called me for a cocktail at their house, and that's when we met.
Oh.
So we, really never kind of interacted with each other till 2001, which is when I came into Delhi. But then we found some common ground, and we used to stay in touch. And then, 12 years later is when my journey with Lemon Tree began. But I think the more important thing is that Lemon Tree's journey and Patu's journey is the bigger journey that people should know. I only played a small role in it. I learned from it, not that I made any changes to it. Because it's a journey of a different kind of perfection. So one, for hospitality professionals to be able to learn a true profitable business model, which was different from whatever they had learned so far, was fantastic. But because he was partly away from the industry when he began, plus he's a financial and a design wizard. So it's incredible. I only kind of got into it, learned it, and took it further. So to say, can you give them roles? And typical roles at that point of time was uniform room, kitchen stewarding, behind the dishwash. And that's what he did. But what happened about 6, 7, 8 months later is that his secretary told them there was a couple, very well dressed, almost as if they were going for a wedding, carrying a large bouquet of flowers, who want to meet him. He agreed to meet them, and they were in tears, they were gushing with pride because they were the parents of this differently abled person. And because that person had found purpose to life and self-esteem, they had found a spouse. And the kid had got, settled in life. So they came to thank him, which made him read a little bit more about such people, if I may call it. I mean, I'm not putting it down. To then realize what is a large percentage of our population that is differently able. And particularly as he began with the speech and hearing piece, that a lot of the people who are speech and hearing impaired die very early because the society shuns them, the family puts them behind. So the frustration becomes depression, depression leads to illnesses, and most of them pass away by the time they are 40 or 45 years old. But when given purpose to live, they live as long as anybody else does, right? And what most people don't realize is this is not genetic. So it's not that because you get married, the kid will have a problem. And so that made him say, I must invest in this.
Sir, as we know, the brand Oberoi Hotels, it is very famous, or it is very renowned for its interview process, like it has set up over the years and all. Please tell me, when you are not formally educated in hospitality, where you find yourself a great career, how was it in your case when you appeared in the interview?
So, the good thing in Oberoi Hotels, and a lot of people also do it, or started to do it later, is it was not important in Oberoi Hotels to know how much you knew about hospitality.
Okay.
It was very important to judge your personality, your attitude, your background, your comfort with communication, your overall personality more than knowledge. To articulate both the erstwhile chairman Rai Bahadur and then the late Mr. P.R.S. Oberoi. Attitude is inborn. Knowledge can be created and given. So the whole piece used to be about personality, attitude, aptitude towards communicating well and being able to serve people. So the questioning was very different. So, and then your overall awareness of the world. There was a fair amount of effort made to check your general knowledge. And general knowledge can be as recent or as much in the past we want to go to, which is how MBA institutions also kind of take it. So the comfort was, do I see gentlemen and ladies interacting with the gentlemen and ladies who are my customers?
Oh.
In essence, though the two sentences I'm using is actually the credo for Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton's credo is, we are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And that's all it says, and it's just so simple. But in application, this is how the interview process went, because they believed that the gaps in learning could always be bridged as long as it was understandable. More the professional hospitality learnings. A lot of the other part is finance, architectural appreciation, service levels, you know, how do you do process mapping, as it's called today, which didn't need you, and you know, most educated people can slip into that pretty easily. So it's not so difficult. But they picked the essence of what they wanted for the people who needed to work with the company. And more the essence is, what is the customer looking for in terms of behavior, personality, communication. That would make them more satisfied in the environment that they'd paid top dollar for. That's how it is.
And how was your first meeting with P.R.S. Oberoi, sir?
So my first meeting was actually the final interview at what was then the Oberoi Intercontinental. Today there's a banquet hall called Nilgiri. You know, it's gone through renovations, but there used to be a hall called Zodiac Hall, which actually had the artwork of all the 12 zodiac signs. And the interview panel was very senior panel, you know, except him as well. And most of those panelists today, you know, names would not really make sense, but they were the doyens both in government, industry, various subjects. So the panel had almost 7 people, out of which one was him. Of course, he had the override. You know, the environment that gets created is very fearful.
Yeah.
If I now think of it, and I'm again
Yeah, please,
captured in
something
the book.
on that. Yeah.
So, but you'd gone, with some of the people on the panel, you'd already gone through them, or they had gone through you in the earlier part. So there are multiple interviews and multiple tests, right, over the period when you begin. And each one of them could ask a different kind of question. But yeah, I don't remember all the questions, but I was pretty good at declamation and elocution and, you know, those kind of things. So we spent a little bit of time saying what got me interested in that. And then I used to do, you know, actually represent the college in my school earlier in quiz contests. So therefore GK, you know, because it was there on my CV, then obviously the question had to go there, which is a very worrisome piece to go to because it's such a wide range.
Exactly,
we haven't covered
exactly.
it. And he's, you know, the question, and that's not a question that I think Mr. Oberoi asked, one of the panelists asked, saying what is the similarity or the dissimilarity between Bennett and Coleman and Reckitt and Coleman?
Okay.
Similarity or dissimilarity between Reckitt and Coleman and
Bennett and Coleman.
Now, thankfully, because, you know, in my GK learnings, you did go backwards on which company was part of it. So I knew one of the Coleman was sticking in my head, had something to do with Colgate.
Oh.
Right, and the other one had to do with Times of India, but I couldn't remember which was which.
Bennett and Coleman.
So it was taking a punt on saying, should I say A, should I say B? But I took the right choices. So Bennett and Coleman is Times of India, and Reckitt and Coleman was Colgate. So that's how the GK answer kind of went together, and we moved on from there. So there were other simpler questions, you know, parents' background, why do you want to join the industry? Which are very general questions. But I think the important one question that got me through was that question. So,
Okay.
and then I was part of the interview panels with him for management training as much as run interviews for the hotels I ran. But each time that I was part of the panel with him, you could understand and learn on how he has this sharp, keen ear and eye for selecting the person. A lot of times we would feel uncomfortable and he would be very insistent that that person made sense. And once we were comfortable talking to him, we'd say, but you know, this is how we thought, what about you? And he'd tell you what triggered his thought on the person, the gentleman, the lady having the right attitude, aptitude. What triggered his thought? And he'd be happy to tell you. So then those became, those are bigger learnings in life than, you know, the bookish learnings. But yeah, he was splendid. He was splendid. And then in the last 8 years of my life, when I became president and after, you know, that time I spent a lot of time with him.
Okay.
On multiple subjects, because I had all the tridents and some over reporting. So you had something or the other always to go and check, get approved, or you know, designs or whatever. And he was in meetings and he would just make you sit there. Didn't really have a place because maybe he was working with a designer, an architect, or whatever, for another project or discussing something on another project. But because time would run off, he said, sit down, maybe you learn something. Didn't have to. He could have told me to wait, but he would always say that. So it's like being a fly on the wall for discussions that go beyond your brief. You learn something, you hear something, something stokes your curiosity. So you say, okay, he asked that question, the guy gave that answer, he didn't like that answer, he said this. What's the depth of it? So then you would go back and ask people, or you would go back and you know, figure out the right answer to satisfy yourself, so that if you were in the same context with him, you would know the right answer. Today, fortunately, you know, between all the social media and applications and access to various things, knowledge can be queued into. A question you can get a basic answer. There can be some nonsense in the wrong links too. But in the earlier days, and even till the time I'm leaving, it wasn't so much that only Google could give you an answer and you didn't want to queue other pieces. Today it's available. So then the only access was to go back into a library, open up a book, ask an architect, hey, that is a question, what is that back and about? There were divisional heads who specialize in this. So the more curiosity, in my opinion, the more curiosity you have to bridge your gaps, and the more you have the ability to reach out to anybody who can teach you, just makes you a wholesome professional, not just in hospitality, in anything. Yeah, so that's how one learned many things from him and otherwise. So it was a great experience. Yeah.
So when you were in the hotels fully, dedicatedly, and you know, your world became that of five-star property. You know?
Totally, yeah.
So did you had that a nostalgia of playing those sports, giving yourself some time into that tennis?
Oh, you tried, but you know, today everybody insists on work-life balances and stuff like that. There was no such concept.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did try and get myself to play sport wherever I was, at least once a week, preferably twice.
Okay.
I stayed with my tennis because, but you know, because it's depending upon where you were, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, access to courts, clubs was limited. But it's something that's always been part of my life. And whenever I could get a chance, I'm also a very avid reader. So a lot of time when I have myself, I read fiction, I don't read heavy stuff unless I want to learn something. And of course, family and activities and movies or whatever. But you use your breaks more for family time or friends time because it's very small. You know, it was a day maybe. If you got the odd Sunday and you want to sleep through it. It got better in the last 3-4 years, but then it went back when I started Carnation with Lemon Tree, because then that was your old small baby that you had to bring up, and it was a different world. I had never done management contracts. I knew something about design, but here I was advising design.
Yeah.
I was advising standards, I was advising marketing. So the responsibility became much higher. And the effort to do hopefully the right thing for people, being able to add maybe value to their learning or growth, because they were adding a lot of value to mine.
Okay.
I had a very small team, but it was a fabulous team, absolutely fabulous young people, who did more for me than their role actually needed them to do. So fantastic, it was a great time. But like I said, maybe my getting into hospitality was destiny. While a lot of my colleagues who were kind of frustrated moved on from hospitality totally. In my batch of 26 people, I'm the only one who lasted. Most did not last even the first decade. In fact, less. But let's just say they found opportunities. And nobody came to me for a choice. So, you know, there was nobody who came chasing. I don't go chasing anywhere else. So, yeah, it remained. But for some reason, and I think it was maybe misplaced confidence from Mr. Oberoi, he kept moving me to different roles in different places. At a point in time, my average tenure in a role was 18 to 20 months. Location, country. But then each new place that you go to, your horizon looks at life totally differently. The people are different, their thinking process is different, some of the standards are different, the ownerships are different. Like I said, you know, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf War was just ending. So I went, the war was still on. In Sri Lanka, there was that whole problem that was continuous at that time, which has its own challenges for a hospitality professional and the teams and the guests. So while you had the pleasure of handling challenging differences, it had its strong reservations, because you know you would not know a lot of time whether you should do it or not do it. If you were able to do them correctly, there was a self-satisfaction and learning which you could impart to other people. But financial time becomes strenuous because, you know, budgets, etc. So, I mean, I would say for myself, every couple of years I was wondering whether I was in the right place. That is part of the challenge of life.
So every time the answer was yes, or did it had some
Well, like I said, you know,
50-50 scenario?
no, like I said, you know, I guess God willed it. Nobody came to me for a choice. So, you know,
Okay.
when nobody presents a choice, you don't have a choice.
Okay.
There were a few, you know, questions that were asked and people who came and talked to you, but it never went to fruition. So maybe it was never supposed to. Yeah, but what I enjoyed most was the challenges, the differences in customer type of all kinds in different places. The challenges and the internal customers of all types.
Okay.
Strong unions, politically involved unions in multiple countries. There's a lot of internal learning or change that you go through, which is very difficult to explain just in words, but it changes your personality. So in the prologue of my book, I've actually written that I wanted to write this book for many years. A lot of frustration to complain about my world, right? But every time I moved or something happened, learning had changed, so I want to talk about it differently. I said, but you know, that's how I thought a year and a half ago. So we never came to it, plus time wasn't there. But like I've said in many places, I think my personality and maybe leadership methodology tweaked and amended many times. I would say 7, 8 times. So people who know me from my management training, demeanor, personality, whatever, and would have seen me through my journey, they are able to articulate that more than I can. So I've tried to capture in each episode, in the different locations with the different people, what did I learn differently from that particular place that I worked with? What changed? What remained? What got better? Till the time I completed my journey. So the bigger thing for me, maybe I changed as a human being. I changed as a professional many, many times.
What exactly were those qualities that you are referring to
You
as
know,
a change?
it's very difficult to articulate in words, Rishabh, because right from the way you walk, you talk, what you learn, what you feel sure of as your strengths, your communication style with your team members, with customers, how you write, how you portray, you know, this is also a skill. Of course, learning about food and beverage and, you know, all that part is intrinsic. I realized I loved teaching, and I loved teaching people from their mistakes or the changes that I had gone through, because that would hopefully help them. I've been very curious always, but the more I changed the location, the people, I realized there was so much more that people were teaching me if I was willing to observe and absorb and imbibe. There were some people who didn't come from a hospitality background, but their family background was different. They, you know, were able to do for me over and beyond their roles.
Okay.
Because of their maybe family background, their exposure, or their own learning habits, which added value to me. It added value to what I was doing. So then I was always conscious that they have added to me, and, you know, Carnation Hotels. What can I return? Because I owe them return, because they have delivered to me more than they should. Yeah, so it's a lot of those things that you go through. And, you know, people don't see the benefit of hospitality, and I talk about it's the most underrated profession.
Why do you
it is the
think
most
that
under-celebrated profession?
Yes.
Because, you know, it's just the way it is. And I speak about it in forums all the time. You know, it's always been the third or the fourth thing to look after if you can't get into the normal colleges. Parents still in today's day and age, they say they should become an engineer, a doctor, or lawyer, or not
And if
CA
you
or
can't get
whatever.
into anything, then
The
hospitality.
unfortunate part is there are not those many quality institutions that are there, quality institutions. Also, the education that is imparted not for knowledge. It is imparted for you to learn some scoring chapters. So it becomes more about marks. Did you learn the ethos, the theory of the subject and its application? It's not taught in schools, it's not taught in colleges. And the more the freedoms go through. So also we believe that young people should, even in their late teens and early 20s, should be able to make up their mind of what they want to be. No, reality is it takes a long time for you to even understand or accept what you really want to do, because, you know, your mind and your thinking is not really mature. So what happens then is that you get forced by your social structure, your parental structure, to go into something that may not be your relevant life. You don't even learn if you're being taught. So you don't get admission in colleges, then you join a, you know, catering college, and that's not the reason. Because in the early part, nobody's been able to explain to the school child or the parent how wonderful this trade could be, unless somebody in their family has a background in it, right? So it's the third choice or the fourth choice or the fifth choice.
Or the least, as we could say.
Yeah, and then, you know, we keep talking, oh, we work very long hours. That's the first thing we start an interview. Every industry has long hours. Why do we forget that? But it's accepted in whatever way it is. Of course, now the new gen is kind of bristling about it. But we as hoteliers also talk too much about it. खड़े होकर करना पड़ेगा काम, बहुत very hard. Are you prepared? He doesn't know if he's prepared. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Now you're fear mongering the kid. Then you get into catering college, you go through your induction training. Then a lot of hoteliers don't treat their industrial trainee or the trainee well. So the confidence disappears. So, but what people don't understand, that even that time in catering colleges or when they've been on apprenticeships or even if they work for 1 or 2 years, forget the learning that you get management learning, basic accounting learnings, you appreciate food and beverage, and you appreciate task, and you appreciate the dignity of labor. It is a huge personality change, particularly for Indians who come really from pampered families. Even a middle class kid is a pampered child if you compare them to anybody abroad. You've never made tea in your life, before you finish school or college. It teaches you to be more real, to appreciate certain hardships and to appreciate the finer things, which even if you don't carry on in hospitality, opens up your knowledge, your personality, and your ability to make a distinction or a different choice in the segment of your choice. So if a catering college person, a lady or gentleman, let's say they graduate, they get a job, maybe they worked in front office, so they work in housekeeping, they work in food and beverage, whatever. A couple of years later, you also see other people who are their peers or seniors doing different jobs. You're exposed to what sales does, you're exposed to what revenue management does. If you make friends, you learn a bit, and you say, okay, this is more what I want to do. You may interact with the advertising person, the marketing person, because they are working the festival with you and the poster with you or the service levels or design. It's a hell of a lot of other segment exposure. You want to spend more time learning it from your friends and peers? You can, as long as you're in a good learning environment. But it also holds your choice. Therefore, you become a ready-made product for other industries.
Yeah.
You can speak better, you're dressed better, you smartly, your whole gait and everything is smarter, you're more comfortable with talking to people.
Skills and all, everything.
Some of parts of it. So, in any other retail, insurance, banking, airlines, if a person knows that you've worked with a brand for 2 or 3 years, actually your interviews are much shorter. Because they know if you survived that for 2 or 3 years, you're a ready-made product. Plus, it saves them training time, saves them assessment time. So even if you don't want to continue in hospitality, hospitality opens up vistas of opportunity, both in India and abroad. Now abroad is also more available than it used to be before. So that's a very important that people don't spend too much time thinking about. You're a ready-made product. And I tell everybody, if you survive in hospitality for 5 years, chances are you won't leave it. Even if you leave it, chances are a few years later, in another segment vertical of work, you will come back.
I think I can relate to you in every aspect that you mentioned right now, because hospitality, if you see, it is not only about food and beverage, which a mass has a perception of that you are in a hotel. Like it came into my life like when I was doing hotel management course, when I was not employed. My family, my surroundings, they said, oh, you're a chef. No, I'm not a chef. I'm not into culinary arts. Okay, I learned that, but I'm not professionally go because that was not my mindset when I went there. So, and when I stick to hospitality professionally for 2 years, it opened up my door to healthcare sector where I was employed during the time of COVID.
Correct.
When pandemic was there. So you can imagine the amount of the broader aspect that whenever you are trained like this with traits of serving people, like as we say, na, ki, we are standing long hours. Now that has aided me that has helped me to serve better in those times.
Sure. So,
when you are not able to, sit at some place and command things.
Not just that, let me pull you back. Before you got into the hotel management program, if anybody would have told you 2 years from now you're going to be doing this, 2 years later you're going to be working in healthcare. You know something? After that, you're going to become a podcaster and you're going to enjoy a different life. You would have laughed at them.
Exactly.
If you had understood what podcasting and communication meant, you would have figured saying, I can't do it. I am not so fluent. I am not so comfortable engaging with senior people. What made you comfortable? What made you more engaged, more knowledgeable? What made you comfortable taking the risk that you have today into a medium that is still new, though it's been around for a few years? It is the exposure in our business that changed you in a couple of ways. No other industry will change you as much for the better and take you into routes or roles or verticals. No other industry. You can join an FMCG, MNC, you will be in those verticals. Very few chances of your switching. You may switch the company or the module, but the vertical of expertise, you will still stay with it largely. This is the only business. If you're an engineer, you'll stay an engineer. Normally, an accountant will stay an accountant. You understand? But here, you get exposed so much. So even outside or within, you're changing roles. And sometimes you become better at the other role. Particularly, I mean, it happened in Oberoi Hotels to a lesser extent. Now it's much more. There were 2, 3 wonderful professionals in housekeeping. They'd all been executive housekeepers in wonderful hotels who became general managers. In those days, not so heard of. In Lemon Tree, people from sales became general managers, housekeeping became general managers. Of course, people who were from food and beverage and rooms division became general managers. 2 accountants became general managers. You can tell them. You can go tell them. So, which other industry gives you that switch to become a P&L head? Nobody.
Not at all.
Right? So, it's an underappreciated industry.
Yes.
And because we talk so much about long hours and walking and it's such a problem, plus you won't earn so much money. There are lots of industries that don't earn, but they don't talk about it. If you read the recent Economic Times, articles, the best 2 consulting companies that hire engineers, right? If you read it day before yesterday, I've tweeted and I've put a post on LinkedIn in a very angry form. A professional, technically qualified engineer who spent 5 years, a lot of money, is being hired by these MNCs, large international companies, which means they should have been going through the interview well. They must be very talented. If the engineer in a international company in India is going to get 25,000 rupees a month, why does hospitality get blamed? Are you understanding? But people don't know. And unfortunately, this disparity or the weakness gets shouted from the rooftop, which I think is sad.
Yeah.
Because it is one place where employment will only grow. The government saying skill councils and skilling. It's the one industry that has done skilling since the time the industry came into play. The true apprenticeship programs in the world began either in engineering or in hospitality, largely in the kitchen. Chefs had apprentices. There is so much growth of new hotels in different segments. There was only luxury, economy, budget. Every level has different types of skill sets and fitment. Thankfully, people have understood now the amount of hotels that are going to come up in the next 10 years will probably double in number. To every room, if you just say at least 1 direct employee, That's the amount of employment that's available. Then you say related functions, you add another 0.5. Then you say partnership function, the people who get involved with, the external people, the guides, the drivers. You can actually say for every room, you add 1 to 4 jobs. Now multiply the number. Which industry is so constant in employing and skilling growth? And the same skilled person has the opportunity if they want to switch because they are more ready for other work. It doesn't get appreciated. It's very sad. But I guess it's a bit of a social inadequacy in our system.
That come across.
Because, if you talk to a kid abroad, and I won't mean their systems are better or whatever, once they finish school, they leave home, the parents fund some education or they fund their education themselves, which means that if they have to live outside, then they're okay to work with a Burger King or a McDonald's or on a site or whatever, because they need their additional dollars to be able to live slightly better. So they understand the value of exposure. They understand that will help them get to something better. They have more dignity for the job. In our social structures, we tag the jobs from our past. So housekeeping is a wonderful job. But for the family, even today, I was talking to my mother day before yesterday, she had met some people. So forget it being a tertiary or tier 2, tier 3 problem. Even in the metro city, even today, if a qualified person, the parent or the grandparent will still think that that person is going to work cleaning like a maid does at home. And the maid must get dignity for what she does, because you can't live without a maid any which ways. A poor maid works 3 homes to make a reasonable living. But we have no appreciation for where it can take us. And till the time that appreciation comes, it's a bit of a dichotomy. It's one place where you can grow multiple levels. Most other places have only 2, 3, 4 levels to go. It's one place where you can flip. No other place can give you so many flips. Whatever be your background, like my background is a simple middle class background. Where would I have ever, in any other industry, have understood the fineness of design, linen, food, beverage, communication? Nowhere. It's an education. The job has given me the opportunity to educate myself and widen my horizons widely. It gave me the opportunity of traveling. It gave me the opportunity of working with different cultures and nationality. Which job does that for you? But neither do hospitality institutions talk about it in depth. It just, get the more student. The industry tries, but they can do only little. But our social, intricacies and reservations keep people away from this wonderful business, and I wish they wouldn't, because the opportunity is tremendous.
Exactly. In the world of technology that we are living in now, I think that has taken a significant place in every industry,
Sure.
in hospitality also. Is it impacting the connect between the guest and the service providers like it was in earlier times when there was no technology?
Look, you must understand, it's a cliched term, change is constant, but to a certain extent, it may, in certain segments of hotels, it may reduce the personalization or the human touch. But remember, the customer of the tomorrow in those segments probably prefers that. So let's not look at anything from the prism of our past and learning. The person who decides that is your customer. You understand? In luxury or just under, there will always be a level of personalization required. So no amount of tech or AI will be able to supplant that, because certain part of the price you pay is for a kind of experience. of a particular age group of people who desire that because they worked hard for it. That will take time to go away. But even in that world, there will be elements to simplify which will come from technology. And it will replace something, but it will give the person the chance to be able to access much more what they need to give additive service levels to the customer. It's a changing piece. You can't say that's what's going to happen. No. It's how it will evolve.
Okay.
So let me just quickly say something that you would have done. So the reception in the front office used to have something called information counters. We were supposed to know everything. From information counters, we went to concierges and butlers. Okay, first time. Who was supposed to be the repository of everything in the city, whatever, right? A great concierge would make a lot of money, but also the most important person. But what was the problem? The concierge spent a lot of time picking up snippets of information. And had the effort to be able to make connections and networks to get you a reservation in Indian accent on a Saturday night, right? Which if you lost the person, you lost the repository.
Exactly.
And some of the information that your normal assistant in any of the places would need, because the customer would ask a question thinking you know about your city, we don't know. But here it is. I mean, today, I used it when I went to England and I want to ask, I want to figure out what to do. Today, the chat bot on my WhatsApp is able to answer a lot of questions for me, which actually smoothened my journey when I went to London, and I'm familiar with that place. So I'm standing outside, I remember I used to like it, but I've forgotten the history. I put in a queue and it gave me the answer, I knew what. So it is also easing something off. Maybe to a certain extent it might cause some less personalization, but somewhere else the application and what you can do with that knowledge will create a better customization. So it's a changing world. So that's how it is. I'm sure you enjoyed going to the bank and talking to your banker, writing a check, relationships over 30 years. Now you don't want to.
Exactly.
It's not that you don't like that person anymore. But because that other technologies enable you to save time on some of the repetitive, not so necessary things to do, has that made that person lose a job? Maybe they've lost half a job. But then they've added something. Okay, so that's it's a piece
else taking place.
Certain parts of personalization and human interaction in hospitality will never go.
Okay.
So the people who want to live with it must learn this technology, but also be able to pick from the technology and add value to the personalization in their knowledge. So they remain relevant.
You have remained or you have been functioning at different multiple leadership roles. So in your opinion, when you were to finalize a candidate for some role, what were those set of qualities that one should possess, in your opinion, that it's a kind of a
I said the same thing. No? You asked me what did Oberoi to look for.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I come from that background of learning. So I would look for the same because it makes sense.
Okay.
There's no newer answer. The only newer answer was that I would change. So that was a specific candidate profile that you would look for upper upscale and luxury, even if that upper upscale and luxury was applying in Lemon Tree Hotels as an oracle. But you may not need that fineness of personality in a mid-scale economy, in communication. It's okay in this to be comfortable in the local vernacular because that's what the customer is. Again, when you're selecting certain things, you will select based on the location and the customer's need. You can't just be sitting there, so I must have a graduate. You're setting up a hotel in Bilaspur, you're going to pay Bilaspur level salaries. Is a graduate from Bilaspur going to join you? And do you know are you understanding what I'm saying? So the needs have changed, but the desire that a candidate can show towards learning and adapting is the most important piece. Of course, you have to have a pleasant personality. I'm not saying you have to be good looking. You have a pleasant personality. Again, you're looking at it from the prism of a customer. If you're a customer, what is the kind of person you would want to interact with you? The smile must be there. You must feel that the person is showing some warmth to you. They would answer your questions. If you need something, is quick to respond or find out the answer, which is aptitude also because it comes from there. That doesn't change. Knowledge and the upgradation of various things goes up and down.
As we are discovering your past life experiences, which is very fruitful for us, and if I miss out something which was the saddest of your career was, or for anybody that was who was working in hotels, was 2611, as we have seen on the TVs and discovering your perception.
It was a tough time. Personally.
Where were you at that?
So I was at home here when the attack happened, and within 15 minutes of when the TV started to show it, I knew there was a problem. I couldn't get the information, so I took those days red-eye flights used to work, late night flights, Air India. So I think I reached the airport in the middle of the night. So I reached the airport in about 20 minutes. So I fortunately got a flight, and because I explained what I was going for, they were able to take me on board, even though the boarding gate had stopped with it. They were not issuing any tickets. And then after that 2 hours, I was in Mumbai. So the attack happened, if I recall right, about 9:35. I had landed in Mumbai by midnight, and I was outside the hotel by just before 1. And then after that, it was a continuous, almost 3 days. So, and I think I've been able to express whatever I went through in the book. There's 2 clear episodes. So while there are lots of learnings, and they're captured there, I think what it teaches you is the ability of human beings to absorb pressure of a different kind, to be able to stand tall in a crisis that nobody can teach you about. And a lot of my book is, in multiple episodes, are why do people sometimes do what they do and rise to the occasion when that's not what they should be doing. You're under attack, people are shooting at you. Why would you want to stay back, help people out? Bullets are going all over you. You can run away too. Nobody will blame you. A lot of people did. A lot of people stayed. A lot of people rescued people at personal injury. They're not part of the armed forces, who are trained to the thinking
combat
of combat. They're not soldiers, but they went way beyond the call of any duty to do what they did. So what makes them take? You can't say the brand makes you take it. It's a job that you're doing. You can't say because I was their leader till a little while ago before that they did it for me. Of course, during the case, there are multiple things that I've written where they said, you're here, we'll do it, which is very kind of them, that they had confidence in my ability to get them out of trouble. But so, and I don't think it's just India, a lot of places things have happened. There is a whole human ethos that makes us go beyond and be able to, how should I say it? You're not qualified, but your mind and your soul takes over, which is amazing. Even today, when I think of those days, my hair stands up. But so there are multiple pieces there, and how people responded, but they did. it was one of the most challenging thing I've ever done. And I've unfortunately, as the book says, been part of some very strange, unique crises in the role that I've been. Even Sri Lanka, 2 of the terrorists killed themselves. This sort of a cyanide pill just across the gate from me when I was locking the gate in Sri Lanka. And they were being shot at, and so I was right in the line of fire. So there have been many funny instances which I somehow found myself in. But that was the most impactful, both positively and negatively. Open your thoughts to say why is human behavior sometimes so weak as you see nowadays, or sometimes so strong. It's the same person.
Did it change you, like kind of?
You see, this question many people have asked me in my interviews. It is very difficult for me to answer the question. People who have seen me before, within, and after would be able to answer the question more than me. A lot of people during that time, family, colleagues, felt I sort of behaved like a hero and a Rambo. That was not what it was. A different kind of emotion had taken over, and I've always wondered why it happened. You know, for me, it was I used to stay there for 5 years. Some of the team members had been, and I had known them since when I began in 1983. They had taught me some skills in the game, and some of them died. So for me, it was like somebody had defiled my house, somebody had attacked my family. So it's a mixed up feeling. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. So my behavior, I was in a zone that I can't explain. Right? So, but it's only the other person who probably knows me well or interacted with me before, into it, and after, would say, yeah, something changed, something snapped, for the good, for the bad. Yeah, so I think it gave me more confidence in saying people can go beyond something a lot of times. So what pushes it? It also set me mentally back to say our general government, bureaucratic control system just don't work, and it's a huge disappointment. Because a lot of things could have been avoided.
No.
And I still believe that if something similar, and God forbid it happens anywhere, the same thing would happen. Because the system generally is so, how should I say, it's a slush pond where we all make happy noises, once it's all over. We don't grow into what we should be doing in our roles. So that makes me angry. So sometimes that anger comes out. Earlier that anger wouldn't be there. But because I was there, I understand it. Right? So, but it's difficult for me to give a studied response to that. So.
Ever since you left the hotels actively and during these days, do you encounter some kind of a nostalgia?
Oh, most certainly.
Of being into that property?
Yeah, I hate going into properties that I've been part of.
Oh.
Because, if I see something not working,
yes.
I want to, short of saying I want to kill somebody, I want to. No, so, the reason why I titled the book, and the title originally was supposed to be very different.
Check in, never check out.
Check in, never check out, was, it comes from the song, Hotel California. What does the song actually say? That one para, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. So for me, I've checked out from an active role, but the business is so embedded in my soul that you miss it. And if you interact with another institution, you want to say something, you want to criticize something, you want to appreciate something, you look for things, right? And I had to stop myself from doing it. Because then friends say, didn't you see that? I said, yeah. So why didn't you do something? I said, I don't want to because I've been on the other side. So I tend to make more excuses for lack of performance than to criticize lack of performance because I've been on the other side.
Yes.
So, nahi, aaj staffing kam hoga. It just becomes you.
Yeah.
It's both sides. Will I always miss the business? Yeah. Would I like to be involved in some form of way? Of course. Like I said, it's a bug that gets you. You can't treat it away. No antibiotic can cure you. But yeah, that's how it is.
And if it wasn't for the hotels, what would you have been in your life?
Oh, so again, there are many answers. So like I said, when I was a teenager, I wanted to become a Air Force pilot.
Air Force pilot.
But because of the lenses, and my powers got better over age, surprisingly. I couldn't have even joined the army or anything of that sort. So that was out. I wanted to do the MBA because I was always fascinated by advertising and marketing. I still am. I still learn it. I've been involved with it as a brand head. It was a very strong choice of mine. And had I done the MBA from the institutes I wanted to, I would have probably chosen that path as an absolute preferred choice.
Sir, I believe that your teaching and the way you possess everything, that has made a lot of impact on me, because I have, mend my ways, if I put it that way, because you see, I have now widened my horizons after the first time I met you, and now I feel that I'm more nurtured now. And people around this world of hospitality, may it be who is active in their roles and those who are aspiring and those who are offering something to this industry, have got some insights from you with the conversation that we had. And this was all about the conversation. This was all about the podcast that we had today.
Thank you very
And, I feel that everything has its own limitation, boundaries, and so does this scenario of ours, having time bounds. But then to explore, you would take, kind of, how would I say, I don't know, I would make a web series out of this, because your chapters are so intriguing that I want to know more, know more, know more. Every year, every day, every challenge, everything that you did.
Let me just say to you, I think you're not giving yourself too much credit. The fact that you made this switch, I've seen you podcasting from day one, even as a viewer. I think your style is amended. Your access to people has got better and different.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you seem to be a lot more confident of yourself. We can be diffident and you can be confident. It's two different things. So it's a journey. You will improve like fine wine as you go along. But for everybody, it's a journey. The important thing is to understand the changes in your journey, the improvements in your journey, what you missed out on and you shouldn't have. I won't call them mistakes, they're just things that also teach you. And then you try and improve your packaging after that, is what everything is all about. So, yeah, I think, great job from what you're doing.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time, for your presence. That has made all the difference.
हिंदी में बोलते जब वेले होते तो कोई time का limitation नहीं होता. No, I'm not doing anything, so it's a pleasure to meet all of you again, and wish you more success on many more topics.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure, sir. So this was Rattan Keswani, sir, at the hospitable couch, and as I promised that you would be watching for this conversation, I think you guys have an idea about how industry is and where do we lack and we need to improve as someone whom the next generation looks up to, and what should we possess those qualities of being a human as well. And this was Keswani sir's insights, and I'm sure we need to record much more conversations with him. So on that note, signing off. See you in the next wonderful conversation.